The Perfect Betrayal. Ethan Carter thought he had it all: a successful career in corporate law, a beautiful home, and a loving wife, Lauren. That is, until he found a cryptic text message on her phone. "Last night was unforgettable. Can't stop thinking about you." The number was unsaved. His hands shook as he scrolled through her call logs, frequent late-night calls to the same number. His heart pounded. Had he been blind this whole time? Instead of confronting her, Ethan hired a private investigator, Marcus Lane, a former cop, with a sharp eye for deception. Marcus trailed Lauren for a week, gathering footage and timestamps. The evidence was damning: clandestine meetings, hushed conversations, lingering touches with a man named Daniel Royce, a high-profile investor Ethan had worked with years ago. But the deeper Marcus dug, the stranger things got. Daniel wasn't just any investor. He was a ghost, a man whose business dealings always ended in scandal before he vanished, reappearing under new aliases. It didn't make sense. Why would Lauren be involved with someone like him? Then Marcus disappeared, his last message to Ethan: "Your wife isn't cheating. She's planning something bigger. Don't trust anyone." Ethan rushed home, only to find Lauren waiting in the dimly lit living room. A knowing smile played on her lips as she poured 2 glasses of wine. "You've been investigating me, haven't you?" she asked, her voice smooth, unshaken. Ethan stiffened. "Where's Marcus?" Lauren laughed softly. "Marcus was getting too close. I had to handle it." Ethan's blood ran cold. "You handled it?" She took a slow sip of wine. "Oh, sweetheart, you really thought I was having an affair." She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted you to think that." The realization hit him like a freight train. The text, the calls, the meetings with Daniel Royce, she had planted everything. Lauren smirked. "Daniel isn't my lover. He's my associate. We've been working together for months, setting you up." Ethan's mind raced. "Setting me up for what?" She sighed, swirling her wine. "For your downfall, of course. Did you really think it was a coincidence that you started losing key clients, that your firm began questioning your financials, that Marcus, your trusted investigator, found exactly what I wanted him to find?" His stomach twisted. She had manipulated every move, leading him exactly where she wanted. Lauren stood, walking toward him with a slow, deliberate grace. "By tomorrow morning, you'll be disgraced, fraud allegations, missing company funds, and I'll be the devastated wife, mourning the man she thought she knew." Ethan's world collapsed in on itself. His wife, his partner, hadn't been unfaithful. She had been orchestrating his ruin from the shadows, playing a game so intricate he hadn't even realized he was a pawn, and now he had mere hours to outplay her. The perfect betrayal. Part 2. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. His wife, his loving, devoted wife, had been engineering his downfall for months, manipulating him into believing she was unfaithful while she gutted his life from the inside. Lauren smirked, savoring the moment. "You look pale, darling. Didn't see it coming, did you?" Ethan's mind raced. Fraud allegations, missing company funds, the clients he lost. Had she been pulling strings behind the scenes? If Marcus was compromised? Or worse, he had no one left to trust. He forced himself to stay calm. "Why?" His voice was tight, controlled. "What do you get out of destroying me?" She took a step closer, tilting her head like a predator toying with its prey. "It's not just me, Ethan. You made powerful enemies over the years, men who don't forgive. Men who don't forget." He clenched his jaw. "Daniel Royce?" Lauren smiled. "Among others. But yes, Daniel was eager to help. You screwed him over years ago, didn't you? The SEC investigation into his firm. Your testimony put him out of business. He wanted revenge. But I wanted something bigger." She leaned in, her voice a whisper. "I wanted you to lose everything." A chill ran down his spine. Lauren continued, her voice almost affectionate. "For years, I played the devoted wife, smiling, hosting dinner parties, standing by your side. But I was always invisible to you, wasn't I? Just another accessory in your perfect life. While you built your empire, I was planning my own." Ethan exhaled slowly. "And what's your endgame, Lauren? You think you'll walk away clean?" She laughed. "Oh, Ethan, I already have. By the time you even think of fighting back, the evidence will be airtight. The offshore accounts in your name, the fraudulent transfers traced back to your firm. And me? I'll be the devastated wife, standing in front of cameras, telling the world how I never saw it coming." Ethan forced his expression to remain neutral, but his mind was working furiously. She thought she had won, but she had underestimated one thing: him. He had built his career dismantling schemes like this, exposing corporate frauds, toppling men just like Daniel Royce, and now his own wife had played the long game against him. But she had made a critical mistake. She thought she had broken him. She thought he had no moves left. He inhaled deeply, composing himself. "You're right," he said, his voice calm. "I didn't see it coming. But tell me something, Lauren." He met her gaze with something she didn't expect: amusement. "Did you really think I wouldn't have my own insurance?" For the first time, Lauren's smirk faltered. Ethan pulled out his phone, tapping the screen once. The audio recording app was still running. The red timer blinked at the top. He turned the volume up, letting her words play back in crisp, damning clarity. "I wanted you to lose everything. By tomorrow morning, you'll be disgraced. I already have won." Lauren's expression darkened. "You think ahead?" Ethan cut in smoothly. "Of course I do. That's what you forgot, sweetheart. I built my career spotting liars like you." She lunged for the phone, but he stepped back, holding it just out of reach. "You should know," he added, his voice ice cold. "I sent this to my lawyer 10 minutes ago. And the firm's board, and a journalist who's been dying for a scandal." He smiled. "By morning, they won't be investigating me. They'll be coming for you." Lauren's face twisted with rage. "You son of a—" The front door slammed open. FBI agents swarmed inside. "Lauren Carter," an agent barked, stepping forward. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and wire transfer crimes. Hands where we can see them." Lauren turned to Ethan, fury and disbelief flickering across her face. "You set me up." Ethan smiled. "No, sweetheart. I just made sure your perfect betrayal had the perfect ending." As they dragged her away, Ethan exhaled slowly. The woman he had loved was gone, but so was the man who had been blind to the truth, and in the end, only one of them had won. The end. What do you think? Want an alternate ending or a different kind of twist? The perfect betrayal. Part 3. Lauren didn't struggle as the FBI agents placed her in cuffs, but the look in her eyes was anything but defeated. She held Ethan's gaze, a knowing smirk curling at the corner of her lips. "You think this is over?" she murmured as the agents pulled her away. Ethan didn't respond. He just watched as she disappeared through the front door, her fate seemingly sealed. But something didn't sit right. Lauren was too calm, too prepared. And that smirk. Ethan turned back to his phone, rechecking the email he had sent his lawyer. Everything was there. The recording, the message, the proof of her scheme. So why did it feel like— His phone vibrated. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Carter," a voice said, deep and steady. "We need to talk." The line clicked, dead. Ethan's stomach twisted. Lauren had played the long game against him. Had he just stepped into another trap? 2 days later, Ethan sat at the back of a dimly lit bar, his nerves taut as he waited. Lauren had been transferred to a holding facility, denied bail due to the overwhelming fraud evidence. The news painted her as the mastermind of an elaborate financial conspiracy, using her husband as the perfect scapegoat. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Then, he saw him. A man slid into the seat across from him. Tall, sharply dressed in a dark suit, his presence controlled. Calculating. Ethan knew that look. A man accustomed to power. Daniel Royce. The man smiled faintly. We never properly met, Ethan. Shame, considering how intertwined our fates have become. Ethan clenched his jaw. What do you want? Daniel leaned forward. You think you've won? That your wife is finished? He chuckled. You really don't know her at all, do you? Ethan didn't blink. She's in federal custody. The case against her is airtight. Daniel's smile didn't fade. That's what you think. He slid a small envelope across the table. Ethan hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single photograph of Marcus Lane, dead. His body dumped near the river, his throat slit. Ethan's stomach dropped. Your investigator got too close, Daniel said casually. Just like you are now. Ethan's pulse thundered. Lauren had him killed? Daniel gave a slow shake of his head. Lauren is more resourceful than you realize. She doesn't work alone. A cold dread spread through Ethan's veins. Who else is involved? Daniel chuckled. You're asking the wrong question. Ethan swallowed hard. Then what's the right question? Daniel's eyes glinted. How long has she been planning this? Ethan's breath caught in his throat, because suddenly he realized something. Lauren had never needed to run. She had never even panicked, because she knew. She always knew, which meant she wanted to get caught, Ethan whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. Now you're starting to get it. Ethan's stomach twisted. She's not in prison to pay for her crimes. She's in prison because that's where she needs to be, Daniel finished. And you just helped her get there. Ethan shot up from his seat. Where is she now? Daniel sighed, standing as well. I suggest you find out fast, because whatever she's planning next. He met Ethan's gaze. It starts tonight. To be continued. The Perfect Betrayal. Part 4. Ethan didn't wait. He was out of the bar before Daniel Royce had even finished his drink. His mind was racing. Lauren had planned to get caught. That meant every move he made, the investigation, the recording, even the FBI raid, was exactly what she wanted. But why? And what the hell was she planning from behind bars? He jumped into his car, gripping the wheel tight as he dialed the only number that mattered right now. Agent Connolly. Lauren Carter, Ethan said, his voice tight. I need to see her, now. A pause. Then, she's in federal custody, Carter. You of all people should be celebrating. You don't understand. She wanted this. She's still in control. Connolly sighed. Look, we've got her on fraud, wire transfers, conspiracy. She's locked down. What do you think she can possibly do from... A sudden explosion crackled over the phone. Ethan slammed the brakes. Connolly? He shouted, shouting. Chaos, then static. The line went dead. Ethan's chest tightened. Lauren was already making her move. Federal Detention Center, 10:47 p.m. BI. The time Ethan got there, sirens were blaring. Agents swarmed the perimeter. Smoke curled into the night sky from somewhere inside. Ethan forced his way to the barricade. What the hell happened? An agent recognized him. Lockdown, internal breach. His blood ran cold. Is she still inside? The agent hesitated. We don't know. Ethan cursed. Lauren had orchestrated everything from the start. He had played right into her hands, pushing her exactly where she needed to be. Now she was gone, and he had no idea where she was going next. Meanwhile, Lauren Carter stepped out of the van, breathing in the cool night air. Everything had gone exactly as planned. She peeled off the bloodied prison jumpsuit, revealing a sleek black dress underneath. Adjusted the earpiece in her right ear. A voice crackled to life. "You're clear. We'll see you at the safe house." She smiled. Her real work was just beginning, to be continued. The perfect betrayal. Part 5. Ethan stood at the perimeter of the burning federal detention center, watching as agents scrambled for answers. But he already knew the truth. Lauren was gone, and she had played him like a goddamn violin. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "You look stressed, darling." His grip tightened. "Where are you, Lauren?" A soft chuckle. Now. You didn't think I'd make it that easy, did you?" Ethan turned away from the chaos, pacing. "You set this up from the beginning. Getting caught, the trial, everything. This wasn't about revenge." "Oh, it was never about revenge, Ethan." Her voice was smooth, almost affectionate. "It was about power." Ethan forced himself to stay calm. "Then tell me, what's the end game?" Pause. Then, "You'll see soon enough." The call cut off. Ethan exhaled sharply, shoving his phone away. He needed to think. Fast. Lauren was out. She had resources, and she had help. But from who? His mind raced through the possibilities. Daniel Royce? A hidden partner? Someone inside the system? He needed to go deeper. He needed to find her first, and that meant calling the one person who knew how to hunt ghosts. Thram, a warehouse. In South Boston, the meeting was off the books. The man waiting for him in the shadows was lean, sharp-eyed, a former fixer who had once buried secrets for men like Royce, until he went underground. "Vance," Ethan said. Elliot Vance lit a cigarette, exhaling slowly. "I heard your wife is playing chess while you're still looking for the damn board." Ethan's jaw clenched. "I need to find her." Vance studied him, then smirked. "Funny thing about Lauren Carter. People always thought you were the mastermind." Ethan didn't have time for games. "Where is she?" Vance flicked ash onto the floor. "She didn't escape, Carter. She was extracted." Ethan's pulse pounded. "By who?" Vance took another drag. "How deep are you willing to go?" Ethan met his gaze. "All the way." Vance nodded slowly, then tossed a burner phone onto the table. One number, one shot. Ethan grabbed the phone. "Who am I calling?" Vance smiled darkly. "The last person who saw Lauren before she vanished." Ethan hit the dial button. The line clicked. Then a voice, cold, familiar, spoke. "Hello, Ethan." Ethan's breath caught. It wasn't Lauren. It was Daniel Royce, and he was waiting for him, to be continued. The perfect betrayal. Part 6. Ethan gripped the burner phone tighter as Daniel Royce's voice echoed through the line. "You've been asking all the wrong questions, Ethan," Royce said, his voice calm, almost amused. "And that's exactly why Lauren has always been 2 steps ahead of you." Ethan forced himself to stay composed. "Where is she?" A pause. Then a chuckle. "You still think you're the one chasing her?" Ethan's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" "You'll find out soon enough." The line clicked dead. Ethan cursed under, his breath, his pulse hammering. He turned to Elliot Vance, who had been watching him closely. "You knew Royce was involved?" Ethan demanded. Vance exhaled a stream of smoke. "Not exactly, but I knew someone was pulling the strings. Lauren's smart, but no one breaks out of federal custody without serious help." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "Royce has money, connections. But why would he risk everything for her?" Vance smirked. "Because she's more valuable out in the world than rotting in a cell?" Ethan's pulse pounded. "She's working for him," Vance shrugged. "Or he's working for her. Either way, you're about to find out." Ethan didn't like the sound of that. 15 a.m. A safe house outside. Boston Lauren sat at the long mahogany table, a glass of red wine in her hand. Across from her, Daniel Royce watched her carefully. "You did well," he said, swirling his own glass. "Though I have to admit you made quite the spectacle." Lauren smirked. "You know I never like subtlety." Royce chuckled, taking a sip. "And yet, your husband is still standing, digging, hunting for you." Lauren's smile didn't waver. "Of course he is. He always was predictable." She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "And that's exactly what makes him useful." Royce raised an eyebrow. "You want to keep him in play?" Lauren nodded. "He's the perfect distraction. If we let him think he's close to unraveling everything, he'll chase shadows while we move forward with the real plan." Royce tapped a finger against his glass. "And what's the next step?" Lauren's smile widened. "We burn everything to the ground." 3:45 a.m., Ethan's apartment. Ethan barely had time to react when his front door burst open. A team of masked men in tactical gear stormed inside, weapons drawn. "Down on the ground, now!" Ethan raised his hands, stepping back slowly. "Who the hell are you?" No answer. The next thing he knew, a rifle butt crashed into his skull. Darkness swallowed him whole. Unknown location, 6:27. Amethan's head throbbed as he came to, his hands bound behind a chair. The room was dim, industrial, the hum of machinery filling the space. Then he saw her, Lauren Carter, standing in front of him, completely composed, completely in control. "Good morning, darling," she purred. Ethan clenched his jaw. "You planned all of this?" Lauren smiled. "Of course I did." She crouched beside him, her fingers trailing along his jawline. "You always thought you were exposing my secrets, Ethan. But the truth is, I was always leading you exactly where I wanted." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Why go through all this?" Lauren's expression darkened. "Because I needed you to see the world the way I do, ruthless, unforgiving, and now—" She leaned in closer, whispering against his ear. "Now you have a choice." Ethan swallowed hard. "What choice?" Lauren straightened, stepping back. "You can keep chasing me, keep trying to stop what's coming, and you will lose." She tilted her head. "Or you can join me." Ethan's breath caught. "Join you?" Lauren smiled, knowing, triumphant. "Think about it, love. We were never meant to fight each other." She turned toward the door. "We were meant to rule together." To be continued. The perfect betrayal. Part 7. Ethan sat motionless, his wrists bound, his mind racing. Lauren Carter, his wife, his betrayer, stood before him, offering a choice that made his blood run cold. "Join me." He forced a smirk, masking the war raging in his head. "You really expect me to believe you'd let me walk out of here as your partner?" Lauren crouched again, eyes gleaming in the dim light. "You're thinking like the old Ethan, the moral one, the one who played by the rules and lost." She leaned in. "That Ethan is dead." Ethan held her gaze. "And if I say no?" Lauren tilted her head. "Then I let you go." He frowned. "Just like that?" She chuckled softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, not without consequences, of course." She pulled a tablet from the nearby table and turned the screen toward him. Ethan's stomach twisted. Surveillance footage. A live feed, Sophia, the woman he'd grown close to after Lauren's deception. She was in her bookstore, completely unaware. "You say no," Lauren said smoothly, "and I burn her life to the ground. She'll be bankrupt by next week, framed for fraud. And if that doesn't break her—" Lauren's smile turned razor sharp. "Well, accidents happen all the time, don't they?" Ethan felt a cold fury rise inside him. "You always had a plan, didn't you?" Lauren shrugged. "Of course. That's why I win." Ethan inhaled slowly, forcing his pulse to steady. She was giving him a choice, but it wasn't real. Either he joined her, or she destroyed everything he cared about. But Lauren had one fatal flaw. She thought she was always in control. She had underestimated him before, and he was about to make sure she did it again. The escape plan Ethan had played along, letting Lauren believe she had broken him, that he was considering her offer. But the moment they left him alone, he acted. The chair he was tied to had a weak leg, old, brittle. He shifted his weight, testing it. It gave a little, again. Crack. The splintering sound echoed, but no one came, running. Good. Ethan twisted, ignoring the sharp bite of the rope against his wrists. If he could, The wood snapped. He hit the ground hard, shoulders screaming, but he rolled, reaching for the jagged edge of the broken leg. A few seconds of sawing, and the rope fell away. He was free, but he wasn't done. Lauren thought she had him, thought she had won. She had no idea what was coming next. Ethan grabbed a discarded jacket from a chair and slipped out the door, moving fast. He had two priorities now. Find out where Lauren was really operating from, get to Sophia before it was too late. As he slipped into the shadows, one thing was clear. Lauren Carter had started this game, but Ethan was going to finish it, to be continued. The perfect betrayal. Part 8. Ethan moved swiftly through the industrial corridors of the safe house, his mind racing. Every instinct screamed at him to go after Lauren, to end this once and for all. But then there was Sophia. Lauren had made her move clear. If he refused to play her game, Sophia would suffer. And Lauren never made empty threats. His fists clenched. I have to get to her first. Ethan slipped out of the building and into the cold morning air. The safe house was in a desolate part of the city, likely an abandoned shipping warehouse. He kept his head down, disappearing into the shadows as he moved toward the main road. He needed a car, a weapon, a plan. And most importantly, he needed to get to Sophia before Lauren's people did. 24 a.m. Sophia's bookstore. Sophia stood behind the counter, completely unaware of the storm heading her way. She sipped her coffee, flipping through the store's inventory system, making notes on restocking orders. The bell above the door jingled. She looked up with a warm smile until she saw who had walked in, Daniel Royce. Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Mr. Royce, she said carefully, I wasn't expecting visitors this early. Royce smiled, his tailored suit pristine, his presence effortlessly imposing. Sophia, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. You have quite the charming little shop. Sophia didn't miss the way his eyes flickered across the store, assessing. What do you want? She asked. Royce sighed. Straight to business, then. Fine. I need you to do something for me. Sophia folded her arms. And if I refuse? Royce chuckled. Then I'd worry less about your books and more about your future. Her blood ran cold. She had heard whispers about men like Royce, powerful, untouchable, and now he was standing in her store making threats. Sophia's mind raced. Stay calm. Think. What do you need me to do? She asked, buying time. Royce's smile widened. Simple. When Ethan Carter calls you, stall him. Keep him talking. Keep him here. That's all. Sophia's heart pounded. Ethan. She swallowed hard. Why? Because Lauren is done playing games. Royce leaned in slightly. And she wants him to suffer. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. You're working with her. Royce chuckled. Oh, Sophia. He exhaled. Lauren isn't working with me. I'm working for her. The words hit like a gut punch. Lauren wasn't just pulling strings. She owned them, and Ethan was walking straight into her trap. 45 a.m. 2 blocks away, Ethan gripped the stolen car's steering wheel, his pulse hammering. He was close. Almost there. Then his phone rang. Sophia. Relief flooded him as he answered. Sophia, are you okay? A pause. Then, her voice slightly off. Ethan, you need to get here. Now. Something was wrong. Are you alone? He asked sharply. A hesitation. Yes, she was lying. Ethan's grip tightened. Lauren had gotten to her first. He exhaled, forcing his voice to remain calm. I'm 2 minutes out. He hung up and pressed harder on the gas. This wasn't just a rescue anymore, it was an ambush, and if... Lauren thought she had already won. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. To be continued. The perfect betrayal. Part 9. Ethan's mind worked at breakneck speed as he approached Sophia's bookstore. Lauren thought she had him. She had people watching, controlling the board. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She thought she was still dealing with the man she had betrayed. She had no idea what he had become. Ethan slowed the car 2 blocks away, shutting off the headlights. He needed to see the setup before walking in. His eyes scanned the street. A black sedan parked across from the bookstore. A second car, tinted windows, idling at the far end of the block. At least 3 men watching the entrance. Royce was playing. This by the book? Get Ethan inside, cut off his escape, and take him down. Not happening. Ethan exhaled, forcing himself into a calm state of control. He dialed a number. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. This better be good, Carter. I need a favor, Zane. A pause. How bad? 3-man team, black sedan, and an SUV. Bookstore on 9th. I need them gone in 5 minutes. Zane let out a low chuckle. I'll make the call. The line went dead. Ethan pocketed his phone, his mind already 10 steps ahead. Now, for Sophia. Inside the bookstore. Sophia's fingers gripped the counter tightly. Royce sat across from her, his demeanor calm, his presence suffocating. How long have you known Ethan? He asked casually, glancing at the bookshelves like they interested him. Sophia hesitated. A few months. And you trust him? She swallowed hard. Yes. Royce nodded, smiling as if she had just confirmed something important. Then you'll understand why this is necessary. Sophia forced herself to stay still. You're going to kill him. Royce leaned back. Eventually. Her stomach churned. Then why lure him here? Because Lauren doesn't just want Ethan dead. She wants to break him. Sophia's pulse pounded in her ears. And you're going to help us do it. Sophia kept her face neutral, but inside, panic built like a tidal wave. I need to warn him. Then, the bell above the door jingled. Royce turned, expecting to see Ethan. Instead, a small explosion rocked the street outside. Royce flinched. The black sedan outside lurched forward as its windows shattered. The SUV screeched as 2 tires were blown out in rapid succession. Gunfire erupted. Royce was on his feet in an instant. What the hell? The bookstore's back door burst open. Ethan stepped inside, gun raised. Surprise, Royce. Royce's expression shifted from confusion to fury in a heartbeat. You think you're in control here? Royce growled, taking a step. Toward him, Ethan smirked. I know I am. Outside, more gunfire, shouts. Royce's men were being handled. Sophia gasped softly, her eyes locking onto Ethan's. You shouldn't have come. Not coming wasn't an option. Ethan's voice was firm, unwavering. Royce exhaled through his nose. Lauren's not going to be happy about this. Ethan tilted his head. Then maybe she should have sent someone smarter. Royce's jaw clenched. You really think you're going to walk out of here? Ethan grinned. Oh, I'm not just walking out. His finger tightened on the trigger. I'm taking you with me. To be continued. The perfect betrayal. Part 10. Royce's eyes flickered with calculation as he slowly raised his hands. Outside, the last echoes of gunfire faded. Ethan's backup had handled Lauren's men, but he knew better than to assume the fight was over. Royce smirked. "You really think this changes anything?" Ethan took a step closer, his gun steady. "I think it changes a lot. You're coming with me. And if I say no?" Ethan cocked the gun. "Then I drop you right here and leave your body for Lauren to find." A beat of silence. Then Royce laughed. "You're bluffing." Ethan didn't blink. "Try me." Sophia watched, barely breathing. The tension in the room was suffocating. Royce finally sighed, his smirk fading. "Fine, but you're making a mistake, Carter." Ethan pulled out a zip tie from his pocket. "Let's find out." He secured Royce's wrists and guided him toward the back door. Sophia stepped closer. "Ethan, Lauren won't." "Stop! You know that, right?" He met her eyes. "I'm counting on it. 8:15 a.m. Safe house." The dark, windowless room smelled of dust and concrete. Ethan secured Royce to a metal chair, stepping back to assess him. Royce tilted his head. "So what's the plan, Carter? You going to beat answers out of me?" Ethan leaned in. "I don't need to." He pulled out his phone, showing Royce the screen, a live video feed. Outside the bookstore, his men were already dismantling the wreckage. Royce's men, if they were still alive, were being loaded into unmarked vehicles. "Your people are gone," Ethan said calmly. "Lauren doesn't even know you've been taken yet." For the first time, Royce's confidence wavered. "So here's how this works," Ethan continued. "You tell me where Lauren is, or I make sure you never get to warn her." Royce exhaled, his fingers flexing against the restraints. "You don't get it, Carter. Lauren wanted you to come after me." Ethan's stomach tightened. "She's already 2 steps ahead." Then his phone buzzed. "Unknown number." Ethan's blood went cold. He answered. A familiar voice purred through the speaker. "Hello, Ethan." Lauren. She knew. Ethan's grip tightened. "Lauren?" Her soft chuckle sent a chill down his spine. "Did you really think you could take Royce without me noticing?" Ethan glanced at Royce. The bastard was grinning again. Lauren's voice turned sharp. "I let you have this little victory, Ethan, but it's time you understand. This isn't your game." Ethan kept his tone steady. "Then why are you calling?" A pause. Then, "Because I have something you want." Ethan's body tensed. Lauren exhaled. "Or rather, someone." "Sophia." His pulse pounded. "If you touch her—" Lauren clicked her tongue. "No, no, no. She's safe, for now. But if you want her to stay that way, you're going to do exactly what I say." Ethan's free hand curled into a fist. "I told you before, Ethan, this only ends when I win." The call ended. A suffocating silence filled the room. Royce smirked. "Well, looks like you're the one who just got played." Ethan holstered his gun, his mind racing. Lauren had Sophia, and if she thought that meant she had already won, she was about to find out just how far Ethan Carter was willing to go. To be continued. The Perfect Betrayal. Part 11. The air felt thick, like the calm before a storm, as Ethan stared at the phone in his hand. Lauren's words echoed in his mind, a cruel reminder that this war was far from over. Sophia was in danger, but Ethan had been in worse situations. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the next chapter in his battle against her. He turned to Royce, who was still seated, his expression one of quiet amusement. "You've been working for her all this time," Ethan said, his voice low. "Dangerous." "So tell me, where is she? What's her play now?" Royce shrugged, not even pretending to be afraid. "Lauren's smarter than you, Carter. Always has been. She'll let you think you're in control, and just when you start feeling good about it, she'll pull the rug out from under you." Ethan clenched his jaw. Royce was right in one way. Lauren always kept her cards close. But this time, he wasn't going to be the one left guessing. Ethan grabbed a chair and sat across from Royce, leaning in. "I'm going to find her, whether you want me to or not." Royce's eyes flickered. And what if I tell you you're already too late? Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Royce smiled thinly. Lauren's already planned the next move, Carter. You think she's just sitting back while you make your little moves? No. She's always 10 steps ahead. Ethan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. Enough of your games. Royce raised an eyebrow. You really think you can take her down? I don't think, Ethan said, his voice icy. I know. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd hoped he wouldn't have to call. Zane, he barked when the line clicked open. I need a location on Lauren, fast. There was a brief silence on the other end, then Zane's voice. You know she's not easy to track, but I might have a lead. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Give it to me. There's a warehouse on East 14th, a front for a shell company she's been using. It could be nothing, but it's our best shot. Ethan didn't hesitate. I'm on it. He looked at Royce one last time. Stay put. Royce didn't even flinch. You really think I'm worried? Ethan stormed out of the room, his mind focused. He wasn't going to lose Sophia. Not now. Not ever. 45 a.m. East 14th warehouse. The dilapidated warehouse on East 14th looked like every other abandoned building in this part of town. Desolate, forgotten. But as Ethan pulled up in a nondescript van, his instincts told him something was different. He could feel Lauren's presence here, like an invisible hand, pushing him toward the inevitable. Ethan wasn't sure what he was walking into, but he had no choice. He had to move quickly before she moved again. He parked several blocks away and moved silently toward the building, careful to avoid any obvious security. This wasn't just a safe house. It was something more. Ethan found the entrance and slipped, inside through a side door. The air inside was musty, and the faint sound of machinery echoed in the distance. His hand instinctively went to the gun holstered at his side. The warehouse was a maze of old crates and rusted metal. Ethan moved cautiously, stepping lightly across the creaky floorboards. He didn't want to alert anyone to his presence just yet. He crept deeper into the building, following the faint sound of voices. It wasn't long before he spotted them. 2 figures, moving quickly toward a back room, Lauren, and someone else. He stayed hidden, waiting. A.M. The back room. Inside the room, Lauren and a man Ethan didn't recognize were talking. Their voices were muffled, but the tension in the air was palpable. Ethan pressed his back against the wall, listening intently. It's almost time. Lauren's voice floated through the crack in the door. Everything's set up. You know what? To do when he gets here. Ethan's breath caught. He's going to come for you, the man replied. And when he does, it's over. Ethan couldn't hold back any longer. He pushed the door open just enough to get a clear line of sight. Lauren turned, her eyes narrowing as she saw him. You really thought you could stop me, Ethan? She purred, stepping forward. You've been playing my game all along. Ethan gripped the doorframe, his gun raised, but something in her demeanor froze him for a moment. What's your end game, Lauren? He asked, his voice steady. What do you want from all this? Lauren smiled, her eyes glinting with a mix of amusement and cold calculation. You should know, Ethan. I want everything you have, and I'm going to take it from you, piece by piece. The man beside her stepped forward, his hand reaching into his jacket pocket. Ethan's instincts screamed. Move! A shot rang out, and chaos erupted. To be continued. The Perfect Betrayal. Part 12. The bullet whizzed past Ethan's ear, grazing the edge of his jacket. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the next shot. His heart raced, and adrenaline surged through his veins. The man with Lauren had a gun aimed directly at him. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was life or death. Ethan rolled behind a stack of crates, trying to steady his breath. The man's footsteps were heavy and methodical, closing in on him. Lauren's voice cut through the tension like a blade. You can't hide forever, Ethan. gritted his teeth. "I'm not hiding!" Ethan popped out from behind the crates, aiming directly at the man. But he was already moving, firing again, forcing Ethan to duck just in time. "You've underestimated me," Lauren's voice echoed through the dark room. "And now you're going to pay for it," Ethan's mind raced. He had to finish this. Now. He couldn't let her play him anymore. A noise, a rustle from the corner, made him hesitate for just a fraction of a second. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something glint. The man was distracted by a faint sound from the back of the room. Without thinking, Ethan lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground, his gun flying out of reach. They struggled on the floor, fists landing with brutal force. The man was bigger, stronger, but Ethan's desperation and rage fueled every punch. Lauren's laugh rang out again, cruel and mocking. "You're fighting a battle you've already lost, Ethan!" With one final decisive blow, Ethan slammed the man's head into the concrete floor. The man went limp. Ethan rose to his feet, panting, eyes searching the dark room. Lauren was nowhere to be seen. He wiped the sweat from his brow, his eyes darting to the shadows, his heart hammering in his chest. But then he heard her voice again, this time directly behind him. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Ethan spun around, but it was too late. A gunshot rang out, echoing in the warehouse. 10 a.m., the aftermath. The world felt like it was spinning. Ethan gasped, stumbling back as the bullet lodged into his shoulder. The pain was immediate, raw, and blinding, but he forced himself to stay standing. He couldn't go down now, not when he was so close to ending this. Lauren stood there, her gun aimed steadily at his chest. Her expression was cold, triumphant. "You've been a worthy opponent, Ethan," she said with a smirk, stepping toward him. "But you're out of moves." Ethan staggered, clutching his shoulder, trying to keep his balance. The blood soaked through his shirt, but his focus never wavered. He still had one card left to play. "It's not over," he muttered through clenched teeth. "You won't win." Lauren's smile widened. "You're already losing." But Ethan had a plan. Something he had put in motion the moment he stepped into the warehouse. "I already know where you've hidden Sophia." Lauren's smile faltered for the briefest second. Ethan could see it in her eyes. The panic, the doubt. She hadn't expected him to catch on so quickly. "What did you say?" she demanded, her voice now tight with anger. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out a small device. He pressed a button, and through the open door of the warehouse, the sound of police sirens grew louder. "You're not as untouchable as you think." Lauren froze, her face paling. "You're bluffing." But as the sirens grew louder, it was clear to both of them. Ethan had played her. 2 a.m. The showdown. Lauren's gun lowered, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. She had no escape route. Her plan was unraveling faster than she could control. Ethan took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus despite the searing pain in his shoulder. He could still feel the blood running down his arm, but it didn't matter. This was his moment. "You thought you could control everything, Lauren," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But you never accounted for one thing. Me." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake, Ethan. This isn't over. You'll never stop me." Ethan took another step forward, his feet moving more surely now that his plan was in motion. "No, Lauren. This is over. As the first police." Cars screeched to a halt outside. Lauren's expression changed from defiance to fear. She turned and bolted toward the back door, but Ethan was already on her. He grabbed her arm, spinning her around. "You won't get away." She tried to push him off, but Ethan held firm. He wasn't letting her slip through his fingers again. Not after everything. 40 a.m. The final moment, Lauren was cuffed and shoved into the back of a police car. Ethan watched, his body still buzzing with adrenaline as the officers took her away. Sophia was safe, hidden away in another location. It was over. His pulse was still racing, but the exhaustion and relief started to settle in. He turned and looked at the wreckage of the warehouse. The sound of sirens, the flashing lights. This was the end of a chapter, the beginning of another. He'd fought her for too long, given too much, to let her win. The war wasn't over, but for now, Ethan could breathe. Epilogue. The aftermath. Sophia sat beside Ethan in the quiet of his apartment, her hand resting in his. The warmth of her touch helped ease the weight of everything he'd been through. "We're okay," she whispered, looking up at him with soft eyes. Ethan nodded, though there was something lingering behind his gaze. The battle with Lauren was over, for now. But the scars ran deep. He knew that as long as people like Lauren existed, the fight would never truly be finished. But he was ready for whatever came next, because this time, he wasn't going to be the one who was played. The End. The Perfect Betrayal. Part 13A week had passed since Lauren's arrest. The police had pieced together her network of manipulation and deceit, and now she was sitting in a maximum security facility, awaiting trial. But Ethan wasn't sleeping. Easier. The tension in his body was still there, a constant hum that wouldn't fade. He had won, but Lauren's shadow loomed large over his life. Sophia noticed it too. The once quiet moments between them, the peaceful mornings where everything felt right, now carried an undercurrent of wariness. "Are you okay?" she asked one morning, her voice soft as she poured coffee into his cup. She watched him carefully, studying his eyes as though looking for something buried beneath the surface. Ethan stared at his reflection in the mug, the steam swirling up to meet his face. "I think I will be." His voice was distant, as if testing the words. Sophia sat down next to him, her hand brushing against his. "This isn't over, is it?" He looked at her, meeting her gaze with a sigh. "No, I don't think it is." Sophia's eyes flickered with concern. "What do you mean?" Ethan's thoughts were clouded with doubt. The police had assured him that Lauren had no more allies, but something about that didn't sit right. If Lauren had been orchestrating everything behind the scenes, there was always the possibility that she'd planted a failsafe. He stopped himself, not wanting to burden her with his worries. "I have to make sure she's not playing me again, one last time." Sophia's hand tightened around his, her voice steady. "I'm with you. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Ethan looked at her, grateful but uncertain. The relief from the confrontation hadn't come as he expected. It was like he had been walking through a storm for so long, and the rain had finally stopped. But the ground was still soaked, and the skies were still dark, with the possibility of more. The next move. That afternoon, Ethan sat in his office, his phone on the desk in front of him, as he rifled through the file Lauren had left behind. Despite her capture, there were gaps, places where her influence and reach remained a mystery. The police had already confiscated everything, but Ethan couldn't help himself. He needed to know. He needed to understand exactly how deep this went. His phone buzzed. A message. It was from Zane. "I have something for you. Meet me at the old office on Chestnut." Ethan frowned. That wasn't the kind of message Zane typically sent. He grabbed his jacket and left the office, his gut tightening with anticipation. The old office, Chestnut Street. The building on Chestnut Street had been abandoned for years. The windows were cracked, the paint peeled away by time and neglect. Yet Ethan's instincts told him that Zane was inside. Ethan pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the dark, musty hallway. The silence was suffocating. His footsteps echoed as he walked, the soft thud of his boots a steady rhythm. When he reached the door to the office, he hesitated. His pulse was racing again. What was Zane mixed up in now? He opened the door. Zane sat at the desk, his back turned, the faint glow of a computer screen lighting his face. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and old papers, but it wasn't the smell that caught Ethan's attention. It was the look in Zane's eyes when he turned around. Zane didn't smile. He didn't even acknowledge Ethan's presence at first. "I've found something," Zane said, his voice low, almost like he was afraid to speak. "Something I wasn't supposed to see." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What did you find?" Zane slid a folder across the desk, his eyes shifting nervously. Inside, Ethan saw documents, names, and a map of locations that made his blood run cold. Lauren had a backup plan, Zane continued, his voice shaking. "Something bigger than I thought. I didn't realize just how much she had woven into this web." Ethan scanned the documents quickly. His gaze froze on a name, Sophia Carter. Zane saw the shock in Ethan's eyes. "I didn't know, Ethan. I swear, I didn't realize she'd planned this. But look here." He tapped the map on the desk. "She was going to frame you. Everything we thought was happening with Sophia. This was part of the plan." Ethan felt his world tilt again. He couldn't breathe. "What do you mean? Sophia? How?" Zane shook his head, his face pale. "She knew that you'd eventually come for her, so she laid out a trap. Sophia was never supposed to be your ally. She was part of the game. She's the one who led you here." The betrayal. Within Ethan's mind raced. The room spun as the realization hit him. Lauren had manipulated him from the start, not just through Royce, but through everyone he had trusted, even Sophia. His thoughts went wild, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. How could he have been so blind? Ethan's voice came out, strained. "Sophia, she's been lying to me?" Zane nodded. "She knew about the plan. She was the one who fed you information. She made you trust her." The perfect betrayal. Part 14. The silence in the room felt suffocating. Ethan stood frozen, his mind spiraling through a maze of emotions, betrayal, disbelief, and a burning desire to understand the truth. He had spent so long thinking he was playing the game of deception, but now he realized the cruel twist. He had been the pawn all along. Sophia's voice broke through the silence, barely above a whisper. "Ethan, I never wanted you to find out this way. I didn't have a choice. Lauren, she promised she'd hurt everyone I cared about if I didn't comply." Ethan's gaze didn't leave her. His hands clenched into fists, the heat of fury rising in him. "You didn't have a choice. You could have told me the truth. You could have told me what she was doing." Sophia stepped forward, but Ethan took a step back, instinctively distancing himself. "You think I didn't want to?" Her voice cracked, but she pushed on, desperation coloring her words. "You have no idea what it was like. The threats, the manipulation. She made me believe I had to do this for your safety, for my safety, for your damn family. I get it." Ethan cut her off sharply, his breath coming in shallow gasps. His chest tightened with the weight of it all. The lies, the secrecy, the years he had spent believing in a love that was now reduced to nothing more than a manipulation game. Sophia closed her eyes, tears slipping down her face. "Please, Ethan, I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to be with you. But Lauren had me cornered. I couldn't walk away." Ethan's mind raced as the puzzle pieces clicked into place. All the inconsistencies, the strange behaviors, the moments where Sophia's explanations didn't quite add up. It had all been orchestrated. Lauren had set this trap, pulled the strings, and used Sophia as her unwilling accomplice. But there was something more. "Why now, Sophia?" Ethan's voice was tight, his frustration giving way to confusion. "Why are you telling me this now? After everything? What's changed?" Sophia hesitated, glancing over her shoulder at Zane, who remained in the background, watching them both with an unreadable expression. Then, with a heavy sigh, she met Ethan's gaze. Because Lauren is gone, Ethan. She's not behind bars and she's not hiding away. She's planning something. Something bigger. She wants to bring you down for good. Ethan felt his stomach drop. What are you talking about? Sophia stepped closer, her voice urgent. Lauren has a network. It's bigger than just us. There's a group she's been working with, people who don't care about anyone, only power and control. They're still out there, and they've been watching you, watching us. Ethan's pulse quickened. The sense of danger returned with full force, and the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Lauren's game wasn't over. It was far from it. A new plan. Ethan looked between Sophia and Zane. You're telling me she's still pulling the strings from behind the scenes? But she's in custody, Sophia nodded. She's been careful. She never trusted anyone with the full plan, only enough to use them. Even Zane didn't know the whole picture. Zane looked away, guilt flashing across his face. I didn't know. Not until now. She's been playing all of us like puppets. Ethan's thoughts whirled. He needed to act. But what could he do? Lauren had set everything in motion, and now he was at the center of a game he didn't fully understand. Where is she now? Ethan demanded, his voice cold and hard. Where is Lauren hiding? Sophia took a deep breath. I don't know for sure, but I have a lead. A few months ago, she talked about a safe house, somewhere no one would think to look for her. I think she's been there, waiting for the right moment to strike. Ethan stood motionless, considering her words. Why are you helping me now? Sophia met his eyes with an intensity he hadn't seen before. Because I want to make it right. I was wrong, Ethan. I was a fool to let her manipulate me. But I'm not that person anymore. I don't want to be part of her plan any longer. Ethan felt the weight of her words, but his trust in her was shattered. There was no way to go back to what they had. But the bigger question loomed. Should he trust her now? The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Then, as if the decision was already made, Ethan spoke. We need to find her now, and I don't care how we do it. I won't let her control my life anymore. A dangerous alliance over the next few days, the trio worked together in secret. Sophia led the investigation into Lauren's network, using the information Lauren had left behind. Zane, with his tech-savvy skills, dug into the financial records, piecing together the illicit deals and connections Lauren had made. The deeper they went, the more they uncovered. It seemed that Lauren's empire extended further than anyone had imagined. There were people involved in high-level corruption, some of the most powerful figures in the city. The perfect betrayal. Part 15, Lauren's presence in the doorway was suffocating, like a storm on the horizon that had finally arrived. Ethan stood frozen, caught between disbelief and a chilling recognition that the game he thought he had escaped was only just beginning. Sophia's hand gripped his arm, her voice trembling as she whispered, She can't be here. Not now. Ethan didn't respond, his focus entirely on Lauren, who was standing just outside the threshold, her posture relaxed, but every inch of her body exuding a calm menace. I told you, Ethan. Lauren's voice was smooth, almost soothing, as though she were speaking to a child. You really thought you could just tear everything down and walk away? You're smarter than that. Or at least I thought you were. Sophia's face drained of color as she stepped forward. Lauren, why are you doing this? You've won. Let us go. Lauren's eyes flickered toward Sophia, a dark smile curling on her lips. Oh, sweetie, I haven't won yet. You've barely scratched the surface. All of this. She gestured vaguely around the room, as if it were a game board. This is just the beginning. You didn't think I'd just sit back and watch? You destroy everything I built, did you? Ethan could feel his heartbeat quickening, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "What do you want from me, Lauren?" he asked, his voice cold and steady, trying to mask the growing panic inside. Lauren stepped closer, her heels clicking on the floor, the sound sharp and final. She leaned in, her lips curling into a smile that made Ethan's skin crawl. "I want to see if you're really as clever as you think you are," she purred. "I want you to try. But let me warn you, Ethan, you're already too late. You should have stayed out of this. But now you're tangled up in my game and there's no getting out. Not unless you play it my way." Ethan's mind raced. He needed to think fast. Lauren was dangerous. There was no doubt about that. But he also knew one thing. He wasn't going to let her win. "So this is all just a game to you?" Ethan snapped, his anger bubbling to the surface. "You think you can control everything, destroy everyone around you?" Lauren's eyes flashed, with amusement. "No, Ethan, it's not a game. It's survival. I play the long game and I always win." The web unravels. Lauren's taunting words hung in the air as Ethan tried to steady himself, taking in the depth of the situation. He was out of his depth, but he wasn't going to back down. He'd been fooled, manipulated, and pushed to the edge, but now he saw the truth. Lauren had orchestrated this entire mess. Every part of it. From Sophia's involvement to the investigation to Zane's betrayal had been calculated, and Ethan had fallen right into her trap. Sophia's voice trembled as she spoke again. "What do you want from us, Lauren? You've got your power, your control. What's left to take?" Lauren's gaze softened for a split second, a look that almost seemed like pity. "You still don't get it, do you? You think I'm here to gloat? No, this isn't about revenge or control. This is about teaching you both a lesson. A lesson in trust." Ethan took a step forward, ignoring the danger of being within striking distance. "Trust? After everything you've done to us?" Lauren's smile returned, cold and calculating. "Yes, trust. It's the one thing people always overlook. They don't realize how easily it can be broken, how fragile it really is. You've learned that the hard way, haven't you?" She wasn't wrong. Ethan's world had crumbled because he'd trusted the wrong people. And now, standing before him, was the person who had manipulated every step of his fall. "You can't control everything, Lauren," he said, his voice low and filled with quiet determination. "You're running out of options. And so is your network." Lauren's expression darkened for a fraction of a second, but then, just as quickly, she regained her composure. "You think you've won, but you haven't. Not yet." Her eyes flicked to Zane, who had remained silent through the exchange, still processing the truth of what had been happening behind his back. Zane shifted uncomfortably, but Lauren's sharp eyes pinned him in place. "You're a liability now, Zane. You've outlived your usefulness, and like all loose ends, you'll need to be dealt with." Zane's face paled, and Ethan could see the gears turning in his mind as he realized how deep the rabbit hole really went. But before Zane could react, Lauren's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it, then tucked it back into her pocket, with a smirk. "That's my cue," she said, her tone suddenly sharp and final. "But don't worry, Ethan. This isn't over, it's just getting started. You'll see me again. I always come back." Before Ethan could speak, Lauren turned and walked out the door, disappearing into the night. The aftermath. The silence in the room was deafening after Lauren's departure. Ethan stood there, his fists clenched, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The perfect betrayal. Part 16. Ethan didn't sleep that night. His mind kept turning over every detail of Lauren's cryptic words, every move she had made in the shadows. His gut told him something was off, that he was missing something crucial. He needed to find out who else was involved in her intricate web, but the stakes were higher than ever. Lauren wasn't just a player in this game. She was the architect, and the pieces she had set in motion were far from finished. The investigation begins. The next morning, Ethan called Zane and Sophia to meet at the apartment. It was time to plan their next move, and they needed to be careful. Every decision counted now. Zane arrived first, looking even more rattled than before. He walked into the apartment with his head down, avoiding eye contact. Ethan looked up from his laptop, where he had been scanning through old emails and texts, trying to piece together any hint of Lauren's involvement with other players. Zane, "We need to talk. You've been sitting on the sidelines long enough," Ethan said, his tone sharp. "This isn't just about you, or me, or even Sophia. This is bigger than all of us. Lauren's been playing us from the start, and we need to figure out who else is in her corner." Zane swallowed hard, his throat dry. "I don't know what to say, Ethan. I was blind to everything. I thought I was helping. But now I see what you meant." Sophia entered the room, cutting off any more apologies from Zane. Her expression was resolute, and she wasn't giving any of them room to back down. "Enough with the guilt trip, both of you," Sophia said, her voice firm. "We need to move forward. We need to find out who else Lauren is working with." Ethan nodded in agreement. "I've been going through the last few weeks of communications, and honestly, it's overwhelming. There's too much to track down, but we've got to start somewhere." Zane hesitated. "What if we go after the people who've been in contact with Lauren? The people she's mentioned in passing. Maybe they know something we don't." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "You mean her contacts? Those high-profile connections she's made over the years?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Exactly. I think Lauren's been working with someone in the legal world, maybe even someone higher up in her network. If we can track them down, maybe, we'll get closer to understanding her endgame." Sophia pulled out a notebook and started scribbling down names and connections. "We'll need to be careful. We don't know who we can trust. But we can't wait any longer. Lauren has already set things in motion, and if we don't act fast, she'll pull even farther ahead." Ethan stood up, his mind racing. "Then we split up. Zane, you start digging into any of her financial connections. Sophia and I will try to track down her legal contacts. Let's see if we can figure out who's been covering her tracks." Uncovering. The hidden network hours passed as the investigation unfolded, each of them working tirelessly to uncover something, anything, that could crack the code of Lauren's labyrinthine plan. Zane came back first, his face pale and eyes wide. "Ethan, Sophia, I found something. She's been funneling money through a private offshore account. It's not just some petty scheme either. The accounts trace back to a law firm, but not just any firm. It's one tied to some serious players, people who don't get involved in small-time affairs." Sophia leaned forward, a mix of disbelief and curiosity in her eyes. "A law firm? Do you have the name?" Zane hesitated before handing over a printout. "I had to dig deep, but I found the connection. It's a firm called Kent, Graves & Associates. They've been involved in some high-profile cases, too many to count. They're the kind of firm that has ties to government officials, corporate execs, and if they're protecting Lauren..." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "It's bigger than we thought. Much bigger. This isn't just about revenge anymore. This is about control. Power. The kind of power that Lauren could manipulate for years." Sophia flipped through the printout, studying the names. "We need to get into their offices, figure out how they're connected to Lauren. But we need to be careful. The people involved with this firm won't hesitate to bury us if they find out what we're doing." Ethan turned to Zane. "You're sure you're up for this?" Zane's nod was firm, though his face betrayed some uncertainty. "I don't have much choice, do I? I owe you this." The face of deception the next morning, Ethan and Sophia walked into the sleek, imposing offices of Kent, Graves & Associates. They had a plan. A quiet investigation, no confrontation, just gathering intel. Sophia had used her legal contacts to get them a meeting with one of the junior partners, a man named Garrett Henson. He was young, eager, and most importantly, he, didn't know they were onto him. Garrett greeted them with a too-warm smile and a firm handshake, ushering them into a conference room that reeked of wealth and power. The perfect betrayal. Part 17, Garrett's eyes flickered nervously between Ethan and Sophia. The tension in the room was palpable, like the calm before a storm. He was cornered, and Ethan knew it was just a matter of time before he cracked. But would it be enough to uncover Lauren's entire plan? Sophia leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on Garrett. You're in deeper than you think. You've been covering for someone, haven't you? Someone much bigger than Lauren. Who is it? Garrett swallowed hard, his fingers tapping nervously against the polished wood of the table. I don't know what you're talking about. Lauren came to us for legitimate legal services. Nothing more, nothing less. Ethan's voice dropped, cold and measured. You expect me to believe that? She's been siphoning money, moving assets, all under your firm's watch. And now when we ask questions, you act like you don't know anything. You don't get to play the innocent here. Garrett clenched his fists, but there was an underlying fear in his eyes. He was about to make a choice, one that could either lead them to the truth or seal his fate. Finally he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. It wasn't just her. It was her whole network. But I don't have the full picture. Only what I was told. They wanted us to help with something big, something that went beyond the firm. Lauren, she's just the tip of the iceberg. Sophia leaned forward. Who else is involved? Who's pulling the strings? Garrett hesitated, looking as though he was struggling with his conscience. His hands trembled, but he finally managed to speak. There's someone higher up. Someone who orchestrated everything. I don't know their name, but they've been in contact with Lauren for months. It's not just about money, it's about power. They've been using Lauren as a pawn, getting her to manipulate everything behind the scenes. Ethan's mind raced. Who's behind it all? Why would they choose Lauren? Garrett shook his head. I don't know the details. I just handle the legal side. But there's a man, a powerful man, who's been pulling the strings. He's been making moves that even I don't understand. Sophia pressed harder. Tell us everything you... No, we don't have time for your games, Garrett. If you're smart, you'll help us. Otherwise, you're just as guilty as Lauren. A long silence filled the room. Then, slowly, Garrett spoke again. I don't know who he is, but he's been in contact with the firm for years. All I know is that he's a ghost. He covers his tracks better than anyone I've ever seen. But Lauren, she's been working with him directly. She's not just some victim in this. She's been in control of everything the whole time. Ethan and Sophia exchanged a look. This was the break they needed. Lauren wasn't just a pawn. She was the mastermind behind it all. But now, they had to figure out who this mysterious figure was and how deep the conspiracy ran. The hidden truth, as they left the firm, Ethan's thoughts were a whirlwind. They had been so focused on Lauren that they hadn't considered how far her manipulation went. She had been playing everyone. The police, the legal system, even her own family. And now it was clear that the stakes were much higher than they'd ever imagined. We need to dig deeper into this, Ethan said, his voice steely. If Garrett's telling the truth, then someone's been orchestrating everything from the shadows. We need to find out who he's working for. Sophia nodded. I agree. But we're running out of time. The more we get closer, the more dangerous it's going to get. Whoever this person is, they won't hesitate to eliminate anyone in their way. Ethan clenched his jaw, determination flooding his veins. I don't care how dangerous it gets. I'm going to finish this no matter the cost. Lauren is going down, and whoever's behind all of this is next. The chase intensifies. The following days were a blur of late-night research, calls, and meetings with their contacts. They dug into Lauren's past, her associates, and the people she had crossed paths with. Every new lead pointed to a larger, more complicated web of corruption, and the closer they got, the more dangerous the game became. But then, a breakthrough. came, Ethan was sitting in his car going over files when he received a call from Sophia. "I've got something," she said, her voice urgent. "I've tracked down the source of the money Lauren's been moving. There's a bank, a private account linked to the same mysterious person Garrett mentioned. I've got the transaction ID, but we need to move fast." Ethan's heart raced. "Where do we need to go?" Sophia didn't hesitate. "Meet me at the bank." "This is it, Ethan. We're about to uncover everything." The final confrontation. The bank was tucked away in a quiet, upscale part of the city, a place where people who didn't want to be found went to hide their secrets. As Ethan and Sophia entered, they immediately sensed the tension in the air. There was something about the place. The perfect betrayal. Part 18. Ethan stared at the text message. The words, "You're too late," flashing in his mind like a warning siren. His grip tightened on his phone, his heart pounding as the pieces of the puzzle seemed to shift yet again. Lauren wasn't just hiding from them, she was ahead of them. Somehow she had known they would come for her. She had orchestrated this, just as she had orchestrated everything else. "We need to move fast," Sophia said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm but tinged with urgency. "If she's already ahead of us, we can't waste any more time. We need to confront her, now." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. They had the name Vance Elliott, but they still didn't know who he was. And now, it seemed like Lauren had already taken her next step, disappearing into the wind once more. But they couldn't let her slip through their fingers this time. They couldn't afford another setback. The man behind the mask as. They drove to the address Sophia had pulled from the bank's records. Ethan kept replaying their discoveries. Vance Elliott. The name had come up before in several of Lauren's dealings, but no one seemed to know exactly who he was. He was a ghost, slipping through the cracks of every system they tried to dig into. But now they had a place to start. An old property tied to him in an industrial district on the edge of town. It was the kind of place that spoke of secrets, shadows, and hidden agendas. Sophia's hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. "This could be a trap," she said, her eyes flickering toward Ethan. "We need to be ready for anything. If Lauren's involved with him, it won't be easy. She'll be prepared for us." Ethan didn't answer immediately, his mind still processing the implications. "I don't care. We don't stop until we have the truth. If she's been manipulating everything, if she's been pulling the strings all along, I'll make sure she faces the consequences." Sophia gave a sharp nod, but there was something in her eyes that spoke of doubt. She knew they were walking into a storm, one that they might not be able to weather, but she didn't voice it. Instead, they both focused on the task ahead, confronting Vance Elliott, unraveling the web Lauren had woven, and ending the dangerous game she'd set in motion. The warehouse of secrets. The abandoned building loomed. Ahead, a forgotten relic from a time when industry had thrived in the area. The windows were dark, boarded up, and the air around it felt heavy, oppressive. Ethan's instincts screamed that something wasn't right, but they had come too far to turn back now. They approached cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the wet pavement. Sophia was already pulling out a flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness as they made their way inside. The doors creaked open with a protesting groan, revealing a vast, empty space filled with shadows. "This is it," Ethan muttered, his breath coming out in short bursts. His senses were on high alert, every nerve screaming that they were being watched. "We need to find something, anything that connects Lauren to Vance," Sophia said, scanning the area. They moved through the dimly lit room, their shoes crunching against broken glass and debris. The place was eerily quiet, too quiet. But as they reached the far corner of the warehouse, something caught Ethan's eye, a small desk, half hidden behind a stack of old crates. Papers were scattered across it, along with a laptop that seemed to be left in a hurry. Ethan's hand hovered over the keyboard. Then he paused. He turned to Sophia. This could be a trap. If we're not careful, we could set off alarms or trigger something even worse. Sophia nodded, her eyes sharp. I know, but we're running out of time. We need to take the risk. If we get caught, we'll deal with it. But we can't leave without answers. Ethan gave a quick nod. With a deep breath, he powered on the laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing encrypted files. Sophia quickly started typing, pulling up the records from the hidden account. But just as she was about to access the files, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. "Someone's here," she hissed. "We need to hide. Now." They scrambled behind a stack of crates, holding their breath. The footsteps grew louder, and soon a shadow appeared at the entrance. It was a tall figure moving with a sense of purpose. A man in a dark suit, his face hidden under the brim of a fedora. He moved with confidence, a dangerous aura surrounding him. Ethan's heart stopped. "Vance Elliott," he whispered. Sophia gripped his arm, her eyes wide. "What now?" Ethan was silent, his mind racing. They couldn't let him find them. But they couldn't afford to back down now. He glanced at Sophia, his decision made. "We confront him," Ethan said, his voice low but resolute. "We have nothing left to lose." The confrontation, they stepped out from the shadows, stepping into the cold, sterile light that filtered through the cracks of the warehouse.